Did you know that the bed you might be lying in right now, with its soft mattress and personal space, would be considered an unimaginable luxury, something akin to a king's treasure for the person you are about to become? Their reality was a single straw-stuffed sack on the floor, shared with the entire family, where the only warmth came from the press of other human bodies. It's a startling thought, isn't it? How much has changed, and yet how the need for comfort and rest remains the same. Before you get too comfortable, go ahead and like this video and subscribe to the channel to encourage me to make more content like this. Also, let us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights, and let's begin tonight's journey. You are not woken by a sound, you are woken by the cold. It's a physical presence in the small, dark room. A relentless pressure that has finally pushed its way through the thin wool blanket and the worn linen of your tunic. It seeps into your bones, a damp, familiar ache that signals the beginning of another day. Your eyes open, but it changes almost nothing. The darkness inside your small Waterlandorp house is nearly as complete as the pre-dawn gloom outside. There are no windows, only a single wooden shutter that stays closed tight against the night air, and a doorway covered by a thick hide. The only light is a faint, pulsing orange glow from the center of the room, where the embers of last night's fire sleep under a blanket of ash. This was the final act of the previous evening, obeying the nightly ring of the distant church bell for the curfew, a word that comes from the Norman French couvre-feu, meaning, quite literally, to cover the fire. A simple, practical rule to prevent a stray spark from consuming your entire world. A soft rustle beside you reminds you that you are not alone. You are never alone. You turn your head, the straw in your thin mattress crackling with the movement. Your younger sister is curled into a tight ball on your other side, her small breaths little puffs of steam in the frigid air. Beyond her, the larger forms of your parents are still lumps in the darkness, their snores a low, rumbling duet that has been the soundtrack to your sleep for as long as you can remember. Your entire family, all 5 of you, share this single large pallet on the floor. It's not just for comfort, it's for survival. The shared body heat is the only real defense against the gnawing cold that slips through the daubed walls. The concept of a private room, of sleeping by yourself, is as alien as the idea of flying to the moon. Historians still debate the true extent of privacy within these communal living spaces, wondering if subtle social cues created invisible walls where physical ones did not exist. You only know the warmth of your brother's back against yours, a solid, living shield against the chill. You can smell the day before it begins. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, so deeply ingrained in the thatched roof and woolen blankets that you no longer notice it. Beneath that is the earthy, slightly damp smell of the packed dirt floor, and the closer, more intimate scent of sleep and unwashed bodies. Faintly, from the other side of a low wicker partition, you can smell the sharp, pungent aroma of the family's most valuable possession, the milk cow, and the gentler scent of a few chickens. They share this one-room home with you, their warmth and safety as important to the family's survival as your own. You hear a mouse skittering in the thatch above, a familiar, unseen companion in your small universe. A distant rooster crows, its call thin and lonely in the vast darkness. That is the only clock you need. It is time. The day does not wait for you to feel rested. It arrives, and you must meet it. With a quiet groan, you push the heavy blanket away, the shock of the cold air a sudden, sharp slap against your skin. You swing your legs off the pallet, your bare feet meeting the cold, unforgiving earth of the floor. There are no slippers waiting for you, no soft rug to cushion the shock. The first task is dressing, a simple and swift affair. Your clothes lie in a rumpled heap where you left them last night. You pull on a long linen undershirt, the fabric coarse and cool against your skin. Over this goes your tunic, a heavy, shapeless garment of rough-spun wool. It smells faintly of sweat, wood smoke, and damp earth the permanent perfume of your life. The colors are muted, a drab, brown, or faded yellow, dyed with whatever pigments could be coaxed from onion skins or welled plants gathered nearby. This is your entire wardrobe, save for a second set that gets washed perhaps once a month, weather permitting. Fashion is a concept as distant as the glittering stars you can sometimes glimpse through a crack in the roof. Your clothes are for function, for survival, a shield against the elements, and nothing more. While you dress, your mother is already moving in the dim light, a silent, efficient shadow. She kneels by the hearth, gently blowing on the embers, her breath a prayer to the god of fire. Slowly, a tiny flame flickers to life. Catching on the dry kindling, she feeds it. The growing light pushes back the shadows, revealing the familiar, cramped space of your home. The walls are a mix of woven hazel branches, a technique called wattle, and a plaster of clay, dung, and straw known as daub. It's surprisingly effective, but always seems to be crumbling in one corner or another. You see your father now, pulling on his own tunic and wrapping strips of cloth around his lower legs for warmth and protection. He nods to you, a silent acknowledgement that the day's partnership in labor has begun. Your own first chore is to fetch the water. You grab the 2 wooden buckets and the shoulder yoke that sits by the door. Pushing aside the heavy hide curtain, you step outside into the grey, misty air. The cold is even more intense out here, a physical blow that steals your breath. The village is quiet, a collection of dark, slumbering huts identical to your own, each trailing a thin ribbon of smoke into the dawn sky. You walk the well-trodden, muddy path to the central well, the wooden yoke already digging into your shoulders. The work of drawing water is strenuous, your muscles straining as you haul the heavy, dripping bucket up from the darkness below. On the way back, you focus on your footing, careful not to slip in the mud and spill a single precious drop. This water is for drinking, for cooking, and for the day's minimal washing. Back inside, the fire is now a cheerful, crackling blaze, and a large iron pot hangs over it from a hook. This pot is the heart of the home, and it is almost never empty. Your mother is stirring its contents with a long wooden spoon. This is breakfast. It is the same as yesterday's breakfast, and it will be the same as tomorrow's. It is pottage, a thick, bubbling stew of oats, barley, and whatever vegetables could be spared from the small garden plot behind the house, mostly onions and cabbage. It is bland, but it is hot, and it fills the belly. You wash your hands and face in a basin of the icy water you just carried, the shock of it making you feel suddenly and completely awake. For your teeth, you rub them with a clean, rough corner of your tunic and a bit of salt, an ancient trick that seems to keep the rot at bay, for now. Some people use soot from the fire, but you find the taste unbearable. You and your family gather around the hearth, not at a table, but on low stools, or simply sitting on the floor. You are each given a wooden bowl of the steaming pottage, and a hunk of dark, heavy bread. This isn't the light, airy bread of a lord's table, made from expensive wheat. This is bread made from rye and barley, dense and sometimes gritty, but substantial. Historians still debate whether this monotonous diet provided adequate nutrition or left the population in a constant state of vitamin deficiency. You only know that it is food, and you are grateful for it. You eat in silence. The only sounds the scrape of spoons against wood and the crackle of the fire. There is no time for idle chatter. The sun is not yet fully risen, and the fields are already waiting for you. There are no words exchanged after the meal. The scraping of the last wooden spoon against a bowl is the signal. Your father rises, and you all follow. He reaches for the heavy tools propped against the wall by the door, their wooden handles worn smooth and dark from years of sweat and toil. You take up a sickle, its curved blade sharpened just yesterday on the village grinding stone. Your brother hefts a heavy wooden rake. The tools feel like a part of you, an extension of your arm you've known since you were a child. When you were first tasked with scaring crows from the new sprouts, you step back out into the morning, which has brightened from grey to a pale, watery yellow. The village is now awake and moving, a slow, purposeful stream of humanity flowing from the cluster of huts toward the vast open land that surrounds it. You don't walk to a single, consolidated farm. Your family's land is not a neat square fenced off from your neighbors. Instead, you work within the open field system, a great patchwork quilt of agriculture that has been in place for generations. The manor's land is divided into 3 enormous fields, and within those fields, your family has been allotted a number of narrow strips, perhaps an acre each. These strips are scattered, meaning you might have to walk the length of a field, past the strips of a dozen other families, just to get from one of your own parcels to the next. It's a famously inefficient system, but it ensures that every family gets a share of both the good and the less fertile land. It is the way things are, and the way they have always been. The work is governed entirely by the season. Now, in the late summer, it is the harvest. This is the most crucial, backbreaking, and frantic time of the entire year. The survival of your family and the entire village through the coming winter depends on these few weeks. You find your first strip of barley, the golden heads heavy and bowing in the gentle breeze. Your father takes the lead with a long, heavy scythe. His movements are rhythmic. Powerful dance he has perfected over a lifetime. Swing, slice, swing, slice. The barley falls in neat rows. Your job, along with your mother and sister, is to follow behind, gathering the cut stalks into bundles called sheaves, using the sickle to catch any stray stems. You bind them with twisted stalks of the grain itself and stand them up in shocks to dry. The work is relentless. You bend, gather, bind, and stand, over and over again. The sun begins to climb, burning off the morning mist and beating down on your uncovered head. Sweat stinks your eyes and trickles down your back, pasting the rough wool of your tunic to your skin. The air grows thick with the dust and chaff kicked up by the harvest, an itchy powder that coats your throat and makes you cough. Your muscles scream. Your lower back develops a deep, fiery ache that you know will be with you until you finally lie down to sleep. You don't think about the pain. You focus on the rhythm, the swish of the scythe, the rustle of the stalks, the feeling of the binding twist in your hands. It becomes a kind of meditation, a trance of labor. An interesting superstition some follow is to sprinkle a pinch of dust, collected from the shrine of a local saint during a pilgrimage, onto the first row before the harvest begins, a small prayer for a bountiful yield. You look up for a moment, wiping your brow with the back of a dusty hand. All around you, the entire village is engaged in the same desperate, synchronized effort. Dozens of families, bent and toiling on their own strips of land, a silent army fighting a battle against time and weather. A sudden rainstorm could ruin the drying grain. A day's delay could mean the difference between a full belly in January and the gnawing hunger of scarcity. Historians still debate whether you see this endless cycle as a divine ordinance to be accepted without question, or as a form of inescapable servitude you quietly resent. As you stare at the sea of golden grain, you only know that this is life itself. This is the turning of the great wheel. There is no alternative. The sun is now high in the sky, almost directly overhead. It's a silent signal that a brief respite is near. The sun reaches its zenith, a silent command for work to cease for a time. You lay down your sickle, your back groaning in protest as you straighten up. Your mother has already unpacked the midday meal, a simple affair of more dark bread, a wedge of hard, salty cheese, and a flask of weak ale, often called small beer. It's thin and watery, but safer to drink than the often contaminated water from local streams. As you chew the dense bread, you look back toward the cluster of buildings that is your entire world. The village. It's not just a collection of homes. It's a living organism, and you are one small cell within it. From this distance, you can see its layout clearly. A collection of perhaps 30 or 40 thatched roof huts, much like your own, huddled together around a central patch of muddy, well-trodden ground that serves as the village green. This small space is the heart of your community. It's where children play, where the maypole is erected once a year, and where public announcements are made. At one end of the green stands the blacksmith's forge, a constant source of rhythmic hammering and the sharp smell of hot metal. The blacksmith is a man of immense importance, his skills essential for mending plows, shoeing horses, and forging the simple tools upon which your lives depend. Near the stream that borders the village is the mill, its great wooden wheel turning with a constant, groaning sigh. The miller, like the smith, holds a special status. He grinds everyone's grain, but he is also the Lord's man, and a portion of every sack of flour is his, and, by extension, the Lord's. This is a fact of life you accept, though not always without grumbling. You know every single person in this village. You know their parents, their children, their secrets, and their sorrows. Privacy is a concept that doesn't exist here. A whispered argument inside a hut is public knowledge by noon. A new piglet, born in the night, is a topic of communal conversation by morning. Gossip isn't merely entertainment. It is the primary source of news, social control, and connection. It's how you know who is sick, whose daughter is of marriageable age, and who might be shirking their duties in the fields. Your life is an open book, and so is everyone else's. An eccentric curiosity of this communal life is how the village often cares for its most vulnerable. A man who cannot work due to a crippling injury or a simple mind is not cast out, but is often supported by the community as a whole. A shared responsibility, a recognition that fortune is fickle and anyone could face a similar fate. Within this tiny, interconnected world, there is a clear and unshakable hierarchy. At the top, unseen but ever present, is the Lord of the Manor. Below him is his representative in the village, the Reeve. You see him now, walking through the fields, his posture straighter, his clothes of a slightly better quality. He is one of you, born a peasant, but chosen by the Lord to oversee the work. It is his job to ensure everyone performs their required labor days, that the Lord's share of the harvest is collected, and that order is maintained. He is respected, but also feared. Then there are the skilled craftsmen, the smith and the miller. Below them are families like yours, villeins or serfs. You are not a slave. You cannot be bought and sold, but you are not free either. You are bound to this land. You cannot leave the manor without the Lord's permission. You cannot marry or have your daughter marry someone from outside the village without his consent and often a fee. The Domesday Book of 1086, a great survey of England, recorded villages just like this one, cementing this very structure of landholding and obligation for centuries. Historians debate how rigid this system truly was, but from your perspective on the ground, it feels as permanent and unchangeable as the sky itself. Your place was decided for you the moment you were born, just as your children's places are already being decided. As you finish your meal, your gaze drifts past the humble huts and the muddy green, settling on the two stone structures that truly define the boundaries of your world, one representing earthly power and the other divine. Your gaze settles on the two stone structures that punctuate the horizon, the formidable, distant mass of the Lord's castle, and closer, dominating the village skyline, the parish church. The castle represents power and obligation, but the church, with its spire reaching confidently into the heavens, represents everything else. It is not just a building. It is the center of your universe, the keeper of time, the source of law, and the gateway to salvation. The church is built of enduring stone, while your home is merely mud and straw. This difference in materials speaks volumes about what matters and what endures in the medieval mind. You spend a disproportionate amount of your life either inside the church or thinking about the church. You attend Mass every Sunday, of course, and on countless holy days scattered throughout the agricultural year. You file in, your rough wooden shoes clattering on the cold stone floor, joining your neighbors in a space far grander than any structure you could ever imagine building. The air inside smells of beeswax candles, cold stone, and stale incense. The services are long, conducted entirely in Latin, a language you do not understand. You follow along by rote, kneeling when others kneel, making the sign of the cross when the priest intones the correct phrases. You are there to be present, to see the host, and to feel the weight of God's presence settle upon your shoulders. Because you cannot read or write, the biblical stories are not gleaned from personal study, but are transmitted visually and dramatically. You look up at the soaring vaulted ceiling. Even if your village church is small and simple, it feels immense. Your eyes wander over the murals painted on the walls. These are your illuminated manuscripts, your religious texts. They depict the life of Christ, the torments of the damned, and the valiant struggles of the saints. They are deliberately vivid and often terrifying. When the priest preaches, he does so not just through words, but through highly theatrical sermons punctuated by dramatic pauses and booming accusations. You are taught that the world is a dangerous battlefield between good and evil, and your soul is the prize. This relentless focus on sin and salvation instills a deep, constant anxiety. Every crop failure, every sickness, every bad piece of luck is seen not as random chance, but as God's judgment, or perhaps the devil's mischief. The church controls the very measurement of time itself. There are no precise clocks in your village. Time is marked by the cycle of the church bells. The Angelus bell rings at dawn, midday, and dusk, pausing the work and prompting a brief, silent prayer. The bell for matins calls you to early prayer, and the curfew bell, as you already know, signals the time to bank the fires. This liturgical calendar, not the solar clock, dictates your rhythm. Time is not linear, it is cyclical, a repetition of fasts and feasts. This structure provides immense comfort, for it means that even when everything else is chaos, the divine order is always present, guiding your day. The local priest is often one of the few people in the village who can read and write, making him the keeper of all important documents and the intermediary between the manorial lord and the peasant folk. He is also the local registrar, recording births, deaths, and marriages, even if his penmanship is terrible. Historians still debate the true piety of the average peasant. Did you genuinely fear the demons painted on the walls? Or was religion simply a rigid social structure that provided necessary discipline and community cohesion? All you know is the fear is real. You always cross yourself before a journey or after hearing bad news. You know that if you live correctly, follow the laws of God and the Lord, and confess your minor sins, like stealing a turnip from a neighbor's field, you might, just might, avoid the horrors of damnation, which the priest so vividly describes as hotter than the blacksmith's forge and populated by much less pleasant company. It is a terrifying proposition, but it's a terrifying world, and the church offers the only map out of the darkness. The midday rest is nearly over. You pull your thoughts back from eternity to the immediate reality of the sticky grain waiting in the field. The work doesn't stop, it just pauses. You finish the last of your bread, every crumb precious, and lean back on your elbows, the dry, scratchy stubble of the harvested field pricking your back. This half hour of rest is a small island in a vast ocean of labor, and you cherish it with a quiet intensity. Your muscles, which were screaming just moments ago, have settled into a low, throbbing ache. The sun is warm on your face, and for a few minutes, you can simply exist. You watch a hawk circling high overhead, a dark speck against the brilliant, cloudless blue. The world feels large and peaceful from this vantage point. The midday repast is more than just fuel. It's a psychological anchor in the long day. You savor the sharp, salty tang of the hard cheese, a product of your own family's cow, carefully aged to last through the lean months. The weak ale, the small beer, is not for intoxication but for hydration and calories. It was brewed at home by your mother, a skill passed down through generations. And it is a known fact that it is far safer to drink than water from the nearby stream, which could carry any number of invisible sicknesses. This simple drink, thin as it is a small act of defiance against the unpredictable dangers of the world. You see your younger brother toss a handful of dried peas into his mouth, one by one, making the small treat last as long as possible. These are the luxuries of your life, not gold or silk, but a moment of rest, a sip of clean drink, a taste of something other than pottage. The air is filled with the low murmur of conversation from the other families resting nearby. The talk is not of theology or politics. It is of the earth, of the community. You overhear your father discussing the blight that has touched a corner of Robert's oat strip, a shared concern that affects everyone. Your mother exchanges a bit of gossip with a woman nearby about the weaver's daughter, who is said to be receiving courtship from the blacksmith's apprentice. A group of boys, their brief meal already finished, has started a quick, laughing game of knucklebones. Using the polished ankle bones of a sheep, their shouts and laughter are a bright, cheerful sound against the backdrop of the quiet fields. This is the glue that holds your world together. These shared moments of news, concern, and simple fun reaffirm that you are part of a whole, that your struggles are not yours alone. Historians debate whether these brief moments of levity were a true source of contentment or merely a desperate, fleeting escape from an otherwise brutal existence. For you, in this moment, the distinction is meaningless. The sun is warm, your belly is not empty, and the faces around you are familiar and, in their own way, comforting. You share a look with your sister, a silent communication of shared exhaustion and shared endurance. Someone makes a light joke about the reeve, who can be seen in the distance inspecting the Lord's domain, the part of the land worked exclusively for the manor. The joke is quiet, barely a whisper, but it is met with knowing smiles. It is a tiny act of rebellion, a way of asserting your shared humanity in a system that often treats you as little more than a beast of burden. But the sun continues its relentless march across the sky. Your small island of rest is shrinking. You see your father look up, judging the angle of the light. He sighs, a sound that is part resignation and part readiness. The pause is over. The ocean of labor beckons once more. One by one, the families around you begin to stir, shaking out stiff limbs and picking up their tools. The brief period of rest, of being a person, is finished. It is time to become a harvester again. You push yourself to your feet, your back protesting with a sharp twinge of pain. The hawk is gone, and the blue sky now seems less a promise of peace and more a vast, empty expanse under which your work is never, ever done. As you bend to gather another handful of barley, the sharp twinge in your lower back flares into a hot, searing pain. It's not the familiar, dull ache of fatigue. This is something different, a sharp-toothed animal gnawing at your spine. You bite your lip to stifle a cry and try to straighten up slowly, but the movement only makes it worse. You are young and strong, but the body is a fragile, unpredictable thing. In your world, a simple injury like this is not an inconvenience. It is a potential catastrophe. If you cannot work, you cannot eat. The fear is as sharp as the pain itself. Your mother, her eyes missing nothing, sees you falter. She comes to your side, her face a mask of concern. She places a calloused hand on your back and murmurs about an imbalance. Too much cold and dampness, she suspects, has settled in your bones from sleeping on the earth floor. This is the extent of your medical knowledge, a framework of belief that has been passed down for centuries. The theory of the four humours, first articulated by ancient Greek physicians like Hippocrates, governs all thinking about health. You understand it not in a scholarly way, but as a set of practical truths. Your body is a vessel containing four vital fluids, or humours: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. Sickness is simply these humours falling out of balance. A fever means too much blood, making the body too hot and moist. So the cure is to release some of that blood through leeching or cutting. A cough is an excess of phlegm, a cold and moist affliction. Your back pain, therefore, is a localized symptom of a systemic imbalance. You see the consequences of these imbalances all around you. You think of your uncle, whose leg was scraped by a rusty scythe, the wound festered, the telltale red lines creeping up his skin, a foul smell rising from the blackening flesh. The village healer, a wise woman named Elspeth, packed it with a poultice of mouldy bread and cobwebs, a surprisingly effective, if strange, remedy that sometimes worked as an antiseptic. She chanted prayers over it, but the heat of the infection, the excess of yellow bile, was too great. The fever took him in a week. Even childbirth, a natural event, is a battleground. You have seen women in the village die in a torrent of blood, or from a subsequent fever, leaving behind a motherless babe. For a common toothache, a misery you have experienced yourself, you are told it is a tiny worm gnawing at the root. The only cure is to have the blacksmith, with his strong arms and terrifying pliers, pull the tooth out without any sort of anesthetic. The scream is just part of the process. When the sun finally sets and the work is done, your mother will take you to Elspeth's hut. She lives at the edge of the village, her small home smelling of dried herbs, wood smoke, and something mysterious and wild. She is not a university-trained physician. Those are for the impossibly wealthy lords and bishops. She is a cunning woman, her knowledge a mix of herbalism, superstition, and genuine, hard-won experience. She will examine you, her dark eyes peering at you with an unnerving intensity. For your back, she might prepare a hot poultice of mustard seeds and comfrey to draw out the cold, or recommend you pray to St. Lawrence, the patron saint of back pain. She will also likely give you a bitter tea to drink, made from willow bark, to help with the pain. Historians still debate whether these remedies were effective due to the placebo effect, or because some plants, like the willow bark she uses, contained genuine healing properties we now recognize in modern medicine. For now, though, there is no wise woman, no poultice, no rest. There is only the field, stretching out before you under the hot sun. The harvest will not wait for your body to heal. You take a deep breath, pushing the pain down into a small, tight corner of your mind. You bend again, more carefully this time, your movements stiff and deliberate. The rhythm is broken, the trance of labor shattered. Every motion is a negotiation with the pain. You must endure. In this life, there is no other choice. The reeve is walking the edge of the field, his shadow falling long and sharp in the afternoon light. He doesn't stop to help, of course. His tool is not a scythe, but a tally stick, a simple piece of wood on which he carves notches to keep track of the work owed and the goods collected. He is the Lord's eyes and ears, the human face of a power that is otherwise abstract and distant. Seeing him reminds you of the intricate web of obligations that defines your existence. You are not just working for your family's survival, you are working for the Lord of the Manor. Your life is structured by a system of duties. Several days a week, perhaps 2 or 3, you are required to perform what is known as boon work. This means you must leave your own family's strips of land and go to labor on the domain, the large section of the manor's fields reserved exclusively for the Lord. The wheat, barley, and oats grown there are not for you or your village. They will be carted off to the Lord's castle to feed his household, his knights, and his retainers, or sold for a profit you will never see. You perform this work unpaid. It is not a wage, it is a rent, a tax paid not in coin, but in sweat and aching muscles. It is the fundamental condition of your tenancy on this land. The law of the land is the law of the Lord. If there is a dispute between you and a neighbor, say, over the boundary of a strip of land or a straying pig, you do not go to a state-appointed judge, you go to the manorial court, which is presided over by the Lord or his steward. Justice is swift, local, and often based more on tradition and public opinion than on written statutes. A panel of your fellow villagers, usually the more prosperous ones, might act as a jury. Their verdict based on who they believe is more trustworthy or who has a better reputation. A common method for proving your innocence is compurgation, where you swear an oath and then find a certain number of neighbors, often 12, to swear that they believe your oath is true. It is a system built on reputation, and in a village where everyone knows your business, a good name is your most valuable asset. There are also fines, an endless series of small payments that chip away at your meager resources. If your daughter marries without the Lord's permission, you pay a fine called a mochet. When you die and your son wishes to inherit your tenancy of the land, he must pay the Heriot a death tax, which is often your single best animal, like the family cow. This is a particularly cruel and famous medieval tax, a devastating blow to a family already reeling from loss. You must pay to grind your grain at the Lord's mill and bake your bread in the Lord's oven, even if you could fashion your own. Any attempt to circumvent these monopolies results in another fine. This system, from your perspective, is simply the way the world is ordered. The Lord provides protection from bandits and marauding armies with his castle and his knights. In return, you provide the labor that sustains him. Historians still debate whether this feudal contract was primarily exploitative or a mutually beneficial arrangement that provided stability in a violent and chaotic age. You only know that you see the knights practice their drills in the fields beyond the castle, their armor gleaming, and you feel a sense of security. But you also feel the weight of the Heriot, the constant, gnawing worry of what would happen to your family if your father were to die. The reeve moves on, his tally stick looking heavier and more menacing than a simple piece of wood ought to. His presence has soured the afternoon air, a subtle reminder that your labor is not entirely your own, that your life is not entirely your own. You are bound to this soil, to this Lord, by a chain of obligations forged long before you were born. You turn back to the harvest, the physical pain in your back momentarily forgotten, replaced by the dull, familiar ache of servitude. While you and your father and brother toil under the sun, a different world of labor is unfolding back at the hut. Your mother, having worked alongside you for the first half of the day, has returned to the village to begin her second shift. There is an old, weary saying whispered among the women: "A man works from sun to sun, but a woman's work is never done." It is a truth so profound and self-evident that it needs no explanation. Her domain is a sprawling empire of relentless, essential tasks that keep the fragile machinery of your family's life from grinding to a halt. Her first task is always the fire. The hearth must be kept alive, fed with wood you and your siblings gathered from the Lord's forest, a rite known as a stover, which permits you to take fallen branches, but never to cut down a living tree. On this fire, she will begin preparing the evening meal, which will be, unsurprisingly, more pottage, perhaps with a piece of dried, salted fish added for flavor if it's a special occasion. She must fetch more water from the well, a journey she will make several times a day, the heavy yoke a permanent fixture across her shoulders. She will tend to the small garden plot behind your hut, the calleyard, where she grows the cabbages, onions, and peas that supplement your grain-based diet. She weeds it with a fierce, protective energy, her hands stained permanently with the rich, dark earth. Then there is the endless, monumental task of producing cloth. You do not buy your clothes from a shop. Every thread of the tunic on your back began its life on the back of a sheep. In the spring, your mother helped with the shearing. Then she had to wash the greasy, filthy wool, a foul-smelling job done in the cold stream. After that comes the carding, combing the wool between two paddles spiked with nails to align the fibers. Next is the spinning, for hours every single day, while walking, while talking, while watching the pot. She is never without her drop, spindle, and distaff, a simple stick holding the mass of wool. She expertly draws out the fibers and twists them into a continuous, strong thread, her fingers moving in a blur of ancient, practiced motion. An eccentric curiosity is the belief that a spider dropping onto her spindle is a sign of good luck, promising a strong and even thread. Once she has enough thread, she will set it up on a simple, upright loom in the corner of your hut and spend the dark winter evenings weaving it into the rough, durable cloth that clothes her family. Beyond these Herculean tasks, she is the family's doctor, like Elspeth, with a deep knowledge of herbal remedies for coughs, fevers, and minor injuries. She is the brewer, making the small beer that keeps you all safely hydrated. She tends to the chickens, gathers the precious eggs, and milks the cow, churning the cream into the butter and cheese that are your primary sources of fat and protein. She is the one who mends your torn tunic, who knows how to preserve vegetables for the winter by pickling them in brine, and who keeps the mental ledger of every resource the family has. Historians still debate the extent to which women participated in the heavy agricultural labor. While officially it was men's work, in times of necessity like the harvest, it is certain that every available hand, male or female, was in the fields. Her life is a tapestry of production and care. While your father's work is seasonal and focused on the fields, her work is daily, hourly, and encompasses every aspect of domestic survival. She is the silent, uncelebrated engine of your household economy. You see her now in your mind's eye, her back bent over the smoky fire, her hands never still, her face etched with a permanent, weary strength. Her contribution is not measured in acres harvested, but in the fact that you are alive, clothed, and have a meal, however meager, to return to when the day is finally, mercifully, done. Her work is invisible to the Reeves tally stick, but without it, this entire world would collapse into chaos in a single day. But not all days are spent in the endless toil of the harvest. Once a week, on the day designated by the Lord's Charter, the world expands. Today is market day. This is not a luxury, but a necessity. Your mother has carefully wrapped a half-dozen eggs and a small, hard wheel of cheese in a clean cloth. These are your currency. You also have a small, precious list of items to acquire, chief among them being salt, a vital preservative, and perhaps a new leather strap for your father's shoe, if the trading goes well. You set out not long after sunrise, not towards your family's strips of land, but along the wider, more beaten track that leads to the nearest market town a few miles away. The journey itself is an event, a slow procession of families like yours from all the surrounding villages, all heading to the same destination, their hopes carried in baskets and sacks. Long before you see the town, you hear it. It begins as a low, indistinct hum on the horizon, a beehive buzz of human activity that grows louder with every step. Then you smell it, a complex and overwhelming wave of odors that is the signature of a crowd. The familiar scents of livestock and wood smoke are there, but they are mixed with the sharp temps of roasting meat from a cook's stall, the sweet perfume of baking bread, the sour stench of spilled ale, and the ever-present, pungent aroma of hundreds of unwashed human bodies pressed close together. You round a final bend in the road, and the town's market square opens up before you. It is a chaotic, vibrant, and terrifying spectacle of humanity. You are a small boat in a river of bodies, a constant jostle of shoulders and elbows. The square, normally just a muddy, open space, has been transformed into a labyrinth of makeshift stalls. Merchants have laid out their wares on rough wooden tables or simply on cloths spread on the ground. You see a tanner selling stiff hides and leather goods, a turner with a neat stack of wooden bowls and spoons, and a woman selling homespun cloth in shades of brown and grey. Chickens squawk in wicker cages, a pig squeals as it's tied to a post, and 100 different conversations blend into a single, roaring language of commerce. At the center of it all stands the market cross, a stone monument that signifies the town's legal right to hold this market, a right granted by the Lord and protected by his authority. Your first task is to sell. You find a small space to lay out your cloth, your few precious items looking impossibly small and humble amidst the bounty around you. People drift past, their eyes appraising your goods. A stout woman in a clean apron stops and haggles with you over the cheese, her voice sharp and practiced. Historians debate whether these markets operated on a fixed-price system or if nearly every transaction involved a complex and theatrical process of haggling. For you, it is a tense negotiation, a battle of wits over a few pennies. Finally, a deal is struck. You trade the cheese and eggs for a few small, thin silver coins, which you clutch tightly in your fist. They feel impossibly heavy, the physical representation of weeks of your mother's careful work. With coins in hand, you become a buyer. You navigate the crowd, your eyes searching. You find the salt merchant, his precious commodity piled in a small, grayish heap, sold by the spoonful. You buy what you can afford, and then you have a single coin left. It's not enough for the leather strap. But then you see him, an ale cunner, a local official appointed to ensure the quality of the ale. He pours a bit of brew from a vendor's cask onto a wooden bench, sits down in his leather breeches, and waits a moment before standing up. If his breeches stick, the ale has enough sugar and body and is deemed fit for sale. It's a moment of public theatre, and you watch, fascinated. You use your last coin not on a practical item, but on a single wooden cup of the approved ale, a rare, sweet, and malty treat. For a moment, you are not just a laborer, but a participant in the grand, chaotic, and exhilarating life of the world beyond your village. The sweet taste of the market ale is a pleasant memory as you begin the long walk home. The sun, a great orange ball, is sinking low, painting the underside of the few wispy clouds in shades of pink and gold. The road is still busy with other families returning to their own villages. Their chatter and the shuffle of their feet a comforting sound. For a while, the world feels expansive and full of possibility. The weight of the small bag of salt in your pouch is a solid, reassuring presence, a tangible success in a life of endless labor. But as you turn off the main track onto the smaller path that winds towards your home, the crowd thins out, and you find yourself walking with just a few other families from your own village. The sun finally dips below the tree line, and the world changes instantly. The period between sunset and true darkness, the gloaming, is the most unsettling time of day. The familiar landscape of fields and trees bleeds into a monochrome of grey and black. Shapes become deceptive. A familiar bush on the path ahead suddenly looks like a crouching man. The soft evening breeze rustling the leaves in the nearby copse of woods sounds like whispers. Your pace quickens, as does everyone else's. No one speaks of the reason. It is an unspoken, universal understanding. The night does not belong to man. You must pass through that small stretch of woods to get home. During the day, it is a pleasant, shady place where you gather firewood. Now, it is a place of profound and terrifying mystery. The moment you step under the canopy of the trees, the last of the ambient light is swallowed. The darkness here is absolute, a thick, palpable entity that presses in on you from all sides. You can no longer see the path, you can only feel it with your feet, a slightly less soft track through the mulch of fallen leaves. Every sense is heightened to a painful degree. The snap of a twig to your right makes you jump, your heart hammering against your ribs. An owl hoots from a high branch, and its call is not a sound of nature, but a dire omen. This is the world of folklore, of the stories the old women tell by the fire on winter nights. This is the domain of the Fae, the good folk, who are anything but good if you cross them. You are careful not to speak their name aloud, lest they hear you. You know that they can lead travelers astray, a state known as being pixie-led, causing you to wander in circles until dawn, just feet from your own home. You think of will-o'-the-wisps, the ghostly lights that hover over marshy ground, luring the unwary to a cold, watery grave. Your hand instinctively goes to the small iron buckle on your belt, and you rub it with your thumb. Iron, everyone knows, is a powerful ward against such beings. A simple, practical piece of metal becomes a potent magical charm. Historians still debate whether these folk beliefs were a separate, parallel system to Christian doctrine, or if they were integrated into a complex syncretic worldview where saints and spirits coexisted. For you, there is no conflict. You might murmur a quick prayer to Saint Christopher, the patron saint of travelers, under your breath, while your thumb never leaves the cold, solid reality of the iron buckle. You use every tool at your disposal to navigate the darkness. The fear is not just of the supernatural. The woods can hide very real dangers. Wolves, driven by hunger, are a constant threat, and their howls sometimes carry to the village on a clear night. And then there is the fear of other men, of bandits or desperate outcasts who might lurk in the shadows, ready to rob you of your precious salt and the few coins you have left. The safety of the king's peace is a distant, abstract concept on a path this dark and lonely. Suddenly, you see it, a flicker of light through the trees ahead. It is not the ghostly, dancing light of a will-o'-the-wisp, but the steady, warm, orange glow of a fire. It is the light of your village. A wave of relief, so powerful it almost makes your knees buckle washes over you. You emerge from the oppressive darkness of the woods into the familiar clearing. The fear recedes like a tide, leaving behind only the cold sweat on your skin and the lingering echo of your own frantic heartbeat. You have made it. You are home. The darkness is still there, pressing at the edges of the small circle of light and life, but for now, you are safe within it. You return to the hut, the small bag of salt, a victory you hand to your mother with a surge of pride. The evening meal is eaten quickly, the familiar taste of pottage, a comforting, if monotonous, end to the day. Your younger siblings are already nodding off by the fire, exhausted by their own small labors. But for the men, the day is not quite over. Your father catches your eye and gives a slight nod towards the door. No words are needed. The day's long toil, the tension of the market, and the fear of the dark walk home have earned a small reward. This is a male ritual, a journey from the private space of the family to the public space of the village. You and your father step back out into the cool night air, leaving the world of domestic duty behind. You walk across the darkened village green towards the one building that shows more life than any other. It is not a separate, purpose-built structure, but simply a larger peasant hut, distinguished by the crooked wooden sign hanging by its door and the louder, more boisterous sounds leaking from its shuttered window. This is the alehouse, the secular heart of the village, a counterpoint to the sacred, silent stone of the church. You push open the heavy oak door and are hit by a wall of warmth, noise, and thick, hazy air. The room is dimly lit by a large, roaring fire in a central hearth, its light dancing on the low, smoke-blackened rafters and illuminating the faces of your neighbors. The space is crowded and loud. Men sit shoulder to shoulder on rough-hewn wooden benches, their voices a low, rumbling chorus of gossip, complaint, and laughter. The air is thick with the smell of spilled ale, wood smoke, and damp wool. At the center of this world is the alewife, a formidable woman named Margaret. She is the one who brews the ale, a skill passed down through her family, and she rules this room with an iron ladle and a sharp tongue. She moves through the crowd, refilling earthenware jugs from a large wooden barrel in the corner. Her presence a guarantee of both quality and order. You see her using a bit of chalk to mark a running tally of drinks owed on a wooden board. A simple but effective system of credit. Your father finds a small space at a crowded table, and you squeeze in beside him. He trades a few of the precious coins you earned at the market for a large jug of ale and 2 pottery cups. The ale is not the clear, fizzy drink of another age. It is thick, cloudy, and dark, served at the ambient temperature of the room. It is often called liquid bread, and the name is apt. It's nutritious, full of calories, and far safer than drinking water. You take a long swallow. It is malty and slightly sweet, with a faintly smoky aftertaste from the grains dried over an open fire. It warms you from the inside out, the heat spreading through your chest and limbs, loosening the tight knots of exhaustion in your muscles. Here, in the warm glow of the fire, the rigid hierarchies of the day soften. You are no longer just a serf. You are a neighbor, a friend. The talk is of the harvest, of course, the eternal topic, but also of smaller, more human things. You listen as one man tells a long, rambling, and probably embellished story of outwitting a fox that was stealing his chickens. Another shares news he heard at market from a traveling tinker about a skirmish between two minor lords a few shires away. This is your newspaper, your internet, your source of all information that doesn't come from the priest or the reeve. A joke is made about the lord's new, expensive hunting dogs, who likely eat better than any man in this room, and a wave of gruff, knowing laughter ripples through the smoky air. Historians still debate whether these alehouses were primarily sources of social cohesion and harmless fun, or hotbeds of sin and dissent, as the local priest often warned in his sermons. For you, it is simply a place to feel human. For a few hours, warmed by the fire and the ale, you can forget the ache in your back and the endless obligations of tomorrow. You belong. The warmth of the ale and the fire begins to fade as you step back into the sharp, cool air of the night. The walk from the alehouse to your hut is short, but the world feels different now, quieter. The boisterous camaraderie of the crowded room has been replaced by the vast, silent indifference of the night sky, littered with a spray of impossibly bright stars. Your father walks beside you, a silent, familiar presence. As you cross the middle of the village green, you both stop for a moment, an unspoken, shared instinct, and look up. Past the low, dark shapes of the village huts, beyond the fields you know so intimately, it stands on its hill. The castle. At night, it is a different creature. Not a building of stone and wood, but a solid piece of the darkness, a silhouette cut from the star-dusted fabric of the sky. Its shape is a jagged wound on the horizon. The square teeth of the battlements and the pointed cap of the main tower, stark and menacing. A few torches burn on the ramparts, tiny, flickering sparks like angry yellow eyes watching over the slumbering village. They are not there for your comfort. They are there for vigilance, a reminder that the world within those walls is always awake, always on guard. The castle doesn't sleep. It waits. You have never been inside. You have likely never been closer than the outer fields of the Lord's domain. The castle is a world apart, as alien and inaccessible to you as the moon. You try to imagine what it is like within those impossibly thick stone walls. You have heard stories from the reeve and from traveling merchants who have delivered goods to the kitchens. They speak of a great hall with a ceiling so high a man could stand on another's shoulders and still not touch the beams. Of roaring fires in hearths big enough to roast an entire ox. Of walls hung with colorful tapestries depicting hunts and battles. You picture the lord and his lady, dressed in fabrics you cannot even name, silks and velvets in colors as bright as a summer meadow, eating from silver plates while you use a hollowed-out piece of wood. You know that this castle, like many, probably began its life as a much simpler structure. The priest once spoke of the time of the Norman conquest, when the new lords erected castles of wood and earth all across the land, a design known as the Maton Bailey, a large earthen mound, the motte, with a wooden keep on top, and a lower fenced-in courtyard, the bailey. Over generations, as wealth and power grew, the wood was replaced with stone, the walls thickened, the towers raised higher. The castle is a living history of your servitude. Its stones a testament to the centuries of labor that have been extracted from this land and the people on it. Your mind, trying to grasp the reality of life inside, snags on the small human details. You wonder about their toilets. A passing mason once told you about them, structures called garderobes, which are little more than a stone seat jutting out from the castle wall, with a hole that opens to the air. the waste simply drops down the side of the building, often into the moat below. The thought is both fascinating and slightly disgusting. Even their most private moments are a display of their elevation, a casual dismissal of the world below. Historians still debate whether the relationship between a lord and his peasants was one of paternalistic care, a duty to protect in exchange for service, or pure, calculated exploitation. As you stand here, looking at the silent stone giant, it is hard to feel the care. You feel only the distance, a chasm of power and wealth so vast you cannot even comprehend its depths. The Lord knows the yield of your fields, but does he even know your name? The cold of the night begins to seep into your bones. Your father claps you on the shoulder, a silent signal to move on. You turn your back on the castle's watchful eyes and walk the last few steps to your own small, fragile home, a world away. You enter your small home, the silence within a stark contrast to the noise of the alehouse. The fire has been banked for the night, a bed of embers pulsing with a soft, hypnotic rhythm, the only light in the profound darkness. You find your place on the shared straw pallet, the rustle of the straw a loud sound in the quiet. Your family is already asleep, their deep, even breaths a comforting cadence. As you lie there, waiting for your own sleep to come, your mind drifts, not to the past or the future, but to the very structure of the now. What is a day? What is a year? You don't think in hours or minutes. Those are concepts for monks with their water clocks and scholars with their sundials. Your time is a different thing altogether, a fluid, living element shaped by the sun, the seasons, and the tolling of the church bell. The smallest unit of time you truly comprehend is the day itself, bracketed by the crow of the rooster and the ring of the curfew bell. The day is divided not into 24 equal parts, but into a series of tasks and moments defined by light. There is dawn, morning, midday, afternoon, dusk, and the long dark night. The length of these periods shifts with the seasons. A summer's working day stretching into an almost unbearable length, while a winter's day feels short, cramped, and precious. You judge the time by the length of your own shadow on the ground, a simple, personal clock that tells you all you need to know. You know when it is time to eat, to rest, and to return home, not by a number on a dial, but by a feeling in the air and a position of the sun that you have known since birth. The week is a rhythm of 7 days, a pattern imposed by the church. 6 days of labor, identical in their purpose. And then Sunday. Sunday is a day of profound difference. The tools are set aside, not by choice, but by divine and manorial law. To work on Sunday is a sin and a crime, punishable by a fine in the Lord's court. The day is for God. The mandatory attendance at Mass is the anchor of the day, but the afternoon is a strange and precious thing, a space of structured leisure. It is time for visiting neighbors, for mending clothes, for storytelling, or for the young men to practice archery at the butts, a skill encouraged by the king. Beyond the week is the great wheel of the year, a cycle of feasts and fasts, of planting and harvesting. Your calendar is the Julian calendar, a system inherited from the ancient Romans, but you don't mark its passage by the turning of numbered pages. You mark it by the holy days, the holidays, that dot the landscape of the year. The year for you doesn't truly begin on the cold, bleak 1st of January. It begins in the spring, on Lady Day, the 25th of March, the feast of the Annunciation, when the world is waking up and the new agricultural cycle begins. Historians still debate how strictly these holy days were observed, and whether the time off was a genuine respite or simply a different kind of obligation filled with religious services. For you, they are beacons of light in the fog of work. There is Candlemas in February, when the candles for the year are blessed. There is Easter, the greatest feast of all, marking the end of the lean, hungry weeks of Lent. There is May Day, with its pagan echoes of dancing and celebration, and Lammas in August, the feast of the first fruits. when a loaf of bread made from the new harvest is blessed in the church. And of course, there is Christmas, not a single day, but a 12-day season of relative rest, feasting, and mama's plays. These days are the worn grooves in the wheel of your life, the moments you look forward to and the memories you look back upon. They are the punctuation marks in the long run-on sentence of your existence. Lying in the dark, you feel the turning of this great wheel, a deep rhythm that has governed your parents and their parents before them. It is as much a part of you as the beat of your own heart. A few days pass in the familiar, unbroken rhythm of the harvest. The ache in your back subsides into a dull, manageable throb. The world seems to have settled back into its usual groove. But then, one morning, the rhythm is broken. It is not the church bell that announces the change, but the sharp, insistent blast of a horn from the direction of the village green. It is the Reeves horn, a sound that signals not work, but assembly. A current of excitement and apprehension ripples through the village. Tools are dropped in the fields. Pots are left simmering on the hearth. Everyone, from the oldest man to the smallest child, begins to move towards the center of the village. You join the stream of people, your curiosity a sharp, tingling sensation. The village green, usually a muddy, empty space, is already crowded. The mood is not somber or fearful, but strangely festive, like a market day without any goods for sale. There is a low buzz of gossip, of speculation. You see your neighbors craning their necks, the children pushing to the front for a better view. And then you see the reason for the summons. In the center of the green, by the ancient oak tree, are the stocks. They are a simple, brutal piece of carpentry, 2 heavy wooden beams with holes carved for the ankles and wrists, set on sturdy posts. They are not used often, but when they are, it is an event no one wants to miss. The Reeve stands beside them, his face impassive. Beside him, looking small and pale, is Thomas the baker. His hands are bound in front of him, and around his neck, on a piece of rough string, hangs a small, dark loaf of bread. A murmur runs through the crowd. You understand immediately. For weeks, people have been whispering that the baker's loaves felt lighter than they should, that he was using a hollowed-out stone to cheat the scales. He was stealing from every single person in the village, a mouthful at a time. It is a profound betrayal of trust, an offense against the entire community. There is no lengthy trial. Justice in the manorial court was swift. The baker was accused, the evidence of his doctored scales presented, and a jury of his peers found him guilty. Now is the time for the punishment, and the punishment is designed not just to hurt the body, but to annihilate the soul. The Reeve pushes the baker forward and forces him to sit, his legs thrust through the lower holes of the stocks. The heavy top beam is lowered and locked into place, trapping him completely. He is helpless, on public display, a captive audience for the villagers' scorn. What happens next is the true purpose of the spectacle. A woman at the front of the crowd, whose children are thin and pale, screams an insult at him, her voice filled with a year of pent-up frustration and hunger. Then she stoops, grabs a handful of mud and filth from the ground, and hurls it. It strikes the baker on the cheek, a wet, brown splash. This breaks the dam. Soon, others join in. People who brought rotten vegetables from their gardens for this very purpose begin to throw them. A bruised turnip hits him in the chest. A soft, overripe cabbage splatters against the wood next to his head. The children, seeing it as a game, laugh and throw smaller clods of dirt. Historians still debate whether this public participation in punishment reinforced a communal sense of justice or simply coarsened society, making cruelty a form of popular entertainment. You watch, a strange mixture of emotions churning inside you. There is a grim satisfaction in seeing a cheat get what he deserves. There is also a sickening knot of pity for the man, a neighbor you have known your whole life, now reduced to a target of public loathing. But underneath it all, there is fear. The message is clear, written not in ink, but in mud and humiliation. This is what happens when you break the rules. This is what happens when you threaten the fragile order of our world. The stocks are not just for the baker, they are a warning for you. The spectacle of the baker in the stocks lingers in your mind, a stark reminder of the consequences of breaking social bonds. But life, like the turning seasons, moves on. The harvest is finally brought in, the last sheaf gathered, the fields left bare and bristly. A different kind of energy settles over the village, a feeling of work done, of survival secured for another year. It is in this brief lull that the small, personal dramas of life have room to breathe. And for your family, the most pressing drama is your older sister. She has reached an age where she is no longer a child, but not yet a wife. Her future, and by extension, your family's economic stability, is a constant, low-level topic of conversation between your parents, whispered late at night by the dying fire. Her marriage is not a matter of her heart, but a matter of strategy. It is an alliance, a negotiation, a joining of two family economies. Love, as you understand it from the rare songs of a traveling minstrel, is a luxurious, almost mythical concept, something for the high-born lords and ladies in their castles who can afford such indulgences. For you, marriage is about land, labor, and livestock. The courtship, if it can be called that, is a formal, public affair. A young man from a neighboring family, John, has been showing interest. He is a good match. His family has a few more strips of land than yours, and they own a prized ox, a symbol of relative prosperity. He is strong and known to be a hard worker, which is the most desirable quality in a husband. He does not come to your hut to speak to your sister alone. That would be scandalous. Instead, his father comes to speak to your father. They meet on a Sunday afternoon, sitting on a bench outside your hut, while the rest of the village pretends not to watch with intense interest. The conversation is a delicate dance of offers and counter-offers. Your father speaks of your sister's dowry. It is not a chest of gold coins. Your family has no such thing. Her dowry is a collection of practical, valuable goods that have been accumulated since her birth. There is the cow, a flock of 12 healthy chickens, a set of new linen sheets her mother has spent 2 years spinning and weaving, and a sturdy iron cooking pot, a valuable heirloom. John's father, in turn, speaks of the dower, the portion of his land and property that will be settled on your sister for her support, should she be widowed. They haggle over the number of chickens, the age of the cow, the exact location of the strip of land. It is a business transaction, conducted with the solemnity of a treaty negotiation. Historians still debate the agency of women in these arrangements, questioning whether they were passive pawns or active participants who could influence the outcome through their own preferences and subtle negotiations. Your sister is present for none of this. She sits inside the hut, her hands busy with mending, her face a carefully blank mask. What does she feel? Does she like John? Does she find his quiet presence reassuring, or his crooked smile endearing? Or is her heart filled with a quiet dread at the thought of leaving the only home she has ever known to join a new household, where she will be under the authority of a new mother-in-law? You cannot know. These feelings are her own private country, a place no one else is permitted to visit. An eccentric local custom dictates that if a girl wants to subtly refuse a suitor her family approves of, she can serve him an ale with a sprig of bitter herbs floating in it. A polite, unspoken no. Your sister has served John a clean cup. The decision, it seems, is made. The wedding will be in the autumn, after the final accounting of the harvest is done. It will be a small feast, a moment of celebration, but its true purpose is to cement a new economic reality for two families, a bond forged not of romance, but of survival. The air grows crisper, the mornings frosted with a delicate lacework of ice. The work in the fields has changed from the frantic rush of the harvest to the slower, steadier rhythm of autumn ploughing, turning the earth to prepare it for the winter wheat. It is a time of consolidation, of taking stock, and just as the village seems to be settling into this new pace, a different kind of energy begins to build. Word spreads from the reeve, who heard it from the Lord's steward. The Lord, to celebrate a recent victory in a minor border dispute, has declared a festival for Michaelmas, the feast of Saint Michael, which also marks the end of the harvest season. The news is like a spark in a tinderbox. The grind of daily life is so relentless that the prospect of a designated day of celebration is an almost overwhelming joy. A festival is not just a day off. It is an inversion of the normal world, a sanctioned release of all the pent-up pressures of a hard life. It is a psychological necessity, a safety valve for the entire community. In the days leading up to it, there is a flurry of activity. The women work together to brew a special, stronger ale, the church ale, which will be sold to raise funds for the parish. Your mother carefully sets aside a small portion of the newly harvested grain to be milled into fine white flour for a special bread, a rare and delicious treat. When the day finally arrives, you wake not to the familiar ache of impending labor, but to a feeling of giddy anticipation. After a long morning mass, the entire village spills out onto the green, which has been transformed. A long trestle table has been set up, groaning under the weight of food. The Lord has provided a whole roasted pig, its skin crackling and brown, a display of magnanimous generosity that will be talked about for months. Villagers have brought their own contributions, pies filled with autumn vegetables, pots of peas, pudding, and the precious white bread. The feast is a glorious, chaotic affair. The usual social hierarchies blur. You see the reeve sharing a joke and a piece of pork with a man he fined just last month. For today, you are all simply people, united in the act of feasting. You eat until your stomach is full, a sensation so rare and wonderful you want to hold onto it forever. The strong ale flows freely, loosening tongues and lifting spirits. After the meal, a traveling musician, a minstrel who seems to appear magically whenever there is the promise of a free meal and a few coins, pulls out a battered fiddle. He strikes up a lively stamping tune, and the world erupts into dance. It is not the graceful, choreographed dancing of the Lord's court. It is a wild, earthy, and joyful explosion of energy. People link arms and form a great, spinning circle, their heavy leather shoes pounding the damp earth into a muddy pulp. You grab your sister's hand and join the swirling mass, laughing until your sides hurt, your feet moving without conscious thought, driven by the infectious rhythm of the fiddle. The music is loud, the laughter is louder, and for a few hours, all the hardship and pain of your life is forgotten, stomped into the mud under the spinning feet of the community. An eccentric tradition on this day is the gander pulling, a rather grim contest where men on horseback attempt to pull the head off a greased goose hung from a tree branch. It is a brutal, messy spectacle, but it is met with raucous cheers. Historians debate whether these festivals were a genuine expression of folk culture or a carefully managed tool of social control, a way for the ruling class to allow the peasantry to blow off steam in a harmless, contained manner. As you spin and laugh, dizzy with ale and joy, you don't care about the reason. You only feel the pure, unadulterated release. It is a moment of collective effervescence, a feeling of being part of something larger and more vibrant than yourself. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in fiery colors, but no one wants to stop. This single day of light and laughter must be squeezed for every last drop of joy, because everyone knows that tomorrow, the grey, hard reality of the world will return. The festival ends, as all things do. The last notes of the fiddle fade into the night. The dregs of the ale are finished, and the embers of the bonfire die down. The next morning, the village is quiet, a collective hangover of both ale and joy hanging in the crisp autumn air. You return to the fields, your body sore from dancing, your mind still echoing with the ghost of the music. The world, which for one glorious day felt boundless and full of laughter, has shrunk back to its normal size, defined by the horizon of the manors lands. As you guide the plough through the dark, loamy earth, your thoughts turn outward to the world beyond that horizon. What do you know of this world? Your knowledge is a patchwork quilt, stitched together from scraps of information, rumors, and legends. You know there is a place called London, a city so vast that your entire village could be tucked into one of its alleyways and lost forever. The tinker who passes through once a year speaks of its stone bridge, lined with so many houses and shops that it is a street built over the water, and of its great white tower, a fortress built by the Norman conquerors themselves. You try to picture it, but the scale of it is beyond your imagination. It is like trying to imagine the size of God. Your most direct connection to the wider world comes through the pilgrims. Sometimes you see them on the main track, small groups of men and women, their dusty clothes adorned with the sewn-on badge of their destination. A scallop shell for Santiago de Compostela in distant Spain, a palm branch for Jerusalem in the Holy Land itself. They are on a journey of faith, walking hundreds, even thousands of miles to touch a holy relic and save their souls. You look at them with a mixture of awe and pity. Awe for their devotion and the incredible sights they must be seeing, and pity for the hardships of the road. You have heard their stories of treacherous mountain passes, of dishonest innkeepers, of sickness, and of bandits. A journey of a few miles to the market town is an event for you. A journey to Rome is a saga. Then there are the merchants, men of a different sort, their journeys driven not by faith, but by profit. They travel in armed caravans for safety, their pack horses laden with exotic goods you can only dream of. You have seen them at the larger market fairs, selling not just local wool and cheese, but things that seem to come from another planet. Spices from the east, like pepper and cloves, so valuable they are weighed like gold. Silks from even further away, fabrics so fine they seem to be made of moonlight. These merchants bring with them not just goods, but news and a sense of the world's vastness. They speak in different accents, sometimes even in different languages. They are a tangible link to a global network of trade and travel that you are a part of, but only as the most distant, microscopic thread. Historians debate the true geographical awareness of the average medieval peasant. Did you have a coherent mental map of your kingdom, or was the world simply here and not here? Your own map is not one of nations and borders, but of places. There is your village, the market town, the distant cathedral city where the bishop lives, and beyond that, a vague, shimmering landscape of wonders and dangers, of saints and kings, of vast forests and even vaster oceans. An eccentric and widely believed piece of geography is the idea that monstrous races, men with the heads of dogs or with a single giant foot they use for shade, live at the edges of the known world, a concept illustrated in the margins of monastic maps. You look up from your plough towards the rolling hills that mark the edge of the manor. You wonder what lies on the other side. Not just another manor, another lord, but something truly different. The thought is both exhilarating and terrifying. The world is a great and mysterious book, and you are only permitted to read a single, familiar page. The autumn deepens, the days growing noticeably shorter, the air carrying a persistent chill that promises the coming of winter. Life settles into a quieter, more domestic rhythm. One afternoon, as you are helping your father mend a broken fence that separates your garden from the common grazing land, you see a figure approaching on the path. This is unusual. Strangers are rare and always a cause for notice. This man is not a pilgrim, for he carries no staff or badge. He is not a merchant, for he has no pack horse. He is simply a man, alone, his clothes ragged and caked with the dust of a long road, his face gaunt and weathered. He stops near you, his eyes holding a kind of weary caution. He asks, his voice raspy, for a drink of water and perhaps a piece of bread, if you can spare it. Your father, a man whose charity is always tempered by a deep suspicion of outsiders, studies him for a long moment, but there is something in the man's exhaustion that softens him. He nods, and you go to fetch a cup of water from the hut and a small hunk of yesterday's dark bread. The traveler accepts it with a mumbled thanks that is almost a prayer, and he drinks the water in long, desperate gulps. As he eats the bread, slowly, as if his body has forgotten how, he begins to talk. He is not a beggar or a vagrant, he explains. He is a sailor, his ship having docked in a port city a week's journey to the south. He is walking home to his own village, many miles to the north. His ship, he tells you, has just returned from a voyage that lasted more than a year. He speaks of places you have only heard of in half-believed stories. He describes the coast of Africa, a land where the sun is so hot it scorches the skin of the people who live there black. He speaks of seeing fish that can fly, skimming over the waves like birds, and of strange, brightly colored birds in the forests that can be taught to speak the words of men. You and your father listen, utterly captivated. This is not the second-hand rumor of the tinker or the pious tale of the pilgrim. This is a direct report from another reality. The sailor then reaches into a small leather pouch at his belt. His movements are slow and deliberate. He pulls out a small, lumpy, and wrinkled object and holds it out on the palm of his hand. It is dark brown, hard and gnarled, about the size of a pigeon's egg. He tells you it is a nutmeg, a spice from a place called the Spice Islands, a place so far to the east it takes years to reach. He explains that this single, small nut is worth more than all the chickens your family owns. It is a piece of currency, a store of wealth more compact and valuable than any coin. He lets you hold it. The nutmeg is surprisingly light, and it feels warm in your hand, as if it still holds the heat of its distant, tropical home. You lift it to your nose and inhale. The scent is overwhelming, a powerful, sweet, and exotic perfume unlike anything you have ever smelled before. It is the smell of the world beyond, a scent of impossible distance, of danger, of ships on a vast unknown ocean. An eccentric belief of the time was that spices like nutmeg were not grown on trees, but were harvested from the Garden of Eden itself, carried down the rivers that flowed out of paradise. Holding this small object, it is easy to believe it is something magical, a piece of a lost world. Historians still debate the true impact of these small, trickling encounters with the global economy on the medieval peasants' worldview. Did it breed contentment with their own familiar lot, or did it plant a seed of yearning for something more? The sailor finishes his bread, thanks you again, takes back his precious nutmeg, and continues on his long walk north, a ghost from another universe passing through your small, circumscribed life. You watch him until he is just a speck on the road, the impossible scent of his spice still lingering in your memory. The encounter with the sailor leaves a strange, aromatic residue in your thoughts. The world he described, a place of flying fish and talking birds, feels less real than a dream. As full darkness falls, you are back inside your hut, the hide curtain drawn tight, sealing you into your small, familiar universe. The last task of the day falls to your father. He carefully tends to the fire, not extinguishing it, but burying the largest, hottest embers under a thick blanket of ash. This is the kuvafyu, the covering of the fire, an essential ritual that preserves the precious spark of life for the morning while keeping the hut safe from a stray spark in the night. The fire, the heart of your home, is now asleep, its soft red glow the only source of light. The family settles onto the shared straw pallet. The rustles and sighs of everyone finding their place is the final conversation of the day. You lie down, the coarse wool of your tunic a familiar, scratchy presence against your skin. You don't undress completely. No one does. You sleep in your underclothes, ready for the morning's cold or any sudden alarm in the night. Tucked into the waistband of your breeches is the small utility knife you carry everywhere. It's a tool, not a weapon, but there is a quiet comfort in its presence. It is a known curiosity that many people slept with their knives close at hand, a sign of the ingrained self-reliance required in a world with no police force to call upon. You close your eyes, but the darkness behind your eyelids is no different from the darkness of the room. You can hear the cow chewing its cud on the other side of the wicker partition, a slow, rhythmic grinding. You hear the faint skittering of a mouse in the thatch above. You hear the breathing of your family, a chorus of slow, deep breaths that is the ultimate sound of safety and belonging. Here, in this small, warm pile of humanity, you are safe from the terrors of the night woods, from the judgment of the Lord, and from the vast, unknowable world the sailor spoke of. Your world has shrunk to the size of this single room, to the space you can reach with your outstretched arm. You think of the day, the sun on your back in the fields, the roar of the market, the humiliation of the baker, the joy of the festival dance, the strange scent of nutmeg. It feels like a lifetime, yet it was just a single turning of the earth. Historians still debate the very nature of medieval sleep, suggesting that it was not one long, unbroken block, but two separate sleeps. People would wake for an hour or two in the middle of the night, a quiet, liminal time for prayer, for thought, or for quiet conversation with a spouse, before falling back into a second sleep until morning. As you drift in the space between waking and dreaming, this idea feels natural. The night is not a void, but a different kind of time, a place for the mind to wander while the body rests. Your body is heavy with a deep, bone-weary exhaustion. Your mind is quiet. The anxieties and obligations of tomorrow have not yet arrived. The regrets of yesterday have faded. There is only this moment, this profound, simple peace. You are a single thread in the tapestry of your family, your village, your world. You work the land, you honor your God and your Lord. You find joy in small moments, you endure. It is the life of your father and his father before him, stretching back into a time so distant no one can remember it. And it will be the life of your children. There is a strange, deep comfort in this continuity, in this great slow-turning wheel. Your breathing deepens, syncing with the rhythm of the sleepers around you. You are drifting now, letting go, falling into the warm, silent, and dreamless embrace of the dark. The day is done. The fields are quiet, resting under a blanket of cool night air and a sky filled with silent, distant stars. The fire in the hearth has been covered, its vibrant energy now a soft, gentle pulse of warmth that will last until the dawn. All the work is finished, all the obligations met. All the noises of the day have faded into a deep and profound stillness. You are home, and you are safe. There is nothing left for you to do but rest, to let the weight of your body sink down into the mattress beneath you, to feel the comfort of the blankets that cover you. Allow your own breathing to slow, to deepen, to find the same quiet rhythm as the sleeping family in the small hut. Each breath you take in is calm and peace, and each breath you let out is a release of any tension you might be holding. Feel the muscles in your shoulders soften. Feel your jaw relax. Feel the stillness spread through your limbs. There are no demands on you now. The world outside, with all its complexities and concerns, can wait. For now, your only task is to drift, to float in this quiet, safe space you have created for yourself. The story is over, and what remains is a gentle, comforting silence, a space for your mind to be quiet, to be still. Let the darkness be a soft, warm blanket, a promise of renewal and deep, restorative sleep. All is well, you are secure, and you can now let go and drift away into the sweet dreams that are waiting just for you. The end, sweet dreams.